Ultimately, what we're seeing is an effort to sort of herd the world towards what I would refer to as a neo-feudal model. So sort of going back to the same concentration of power that existed in the feudal era, or the dark ages of Europe, as it were, where you sort of have kings and you have sort of their enforcer class, and then you have a large serf underclass, and that the goal is to have basically those strata, the differences between them, enforced by technology. I think a key component of that is the efforts to control the flow of information, because in that era, right, the church dominated the flow of information and knowledge, and a lot of this was later, spread around and distributed to the serf class through the printing press and things like that, and now in modern iterations, the internet. And in order to bring things back to the neo-feudal era, the powers that be have to take complete control of the internet and the flow of information, and I think that's why we're seeing this increased push of censorization, and also to have AI chat, generative AI that they produce end up producing the lion's share of the content online. Those two things I think go together in order to sort of manufacture reality so that we're more easily controlled and herded into these various systems that they're setting up that will maintain the vast majority of the populace in this serf underclass. A lot of the big establishment thinkers on AI have pretty much talked openly about how that technology is being used to create sort of the upper class, the kings of the data barons, I guess, of the modern era, as opposed to the oil barons of previous eras, and how, the people that control the data that AI trains on and the people that program and maintain AI will be sort of in this upper class, and that AI will act upon the lower class, and the lower class over time will become cognitively incapable of understanding what AI is doing to them and how it's molding their opinions, and will become dependent on AI for everything, and will not really be able to function without it, or even make their own decisions and know their own preferences without it. And this was laid out by people like former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, Henry Kissinger, figures of that variety, openly talking about how this is where this technology is taking us. I think information is absolutely crucial to developing this neo-feudal model, precisely because if they can manipulate how humans perceive reality, they can fundamentally shape human behavior. And I think that's really the ultimate goal of this. And I think, during the COVID era, for example, that was a big boon for them in terms of the lockdowns and all of that, because people weren't interacting so much with the real world. They were instead interacting with the online world chiefly, which they can manipulate more effectively and essentially create realities that don't necessarily exist, and convince people that that's what's happening, and manipulate trust also. And as I'm sure you and your audience are aware, the big theme at the World Economic Forum for the past several years, including this year, has been rebuilding trust, and how to claim trust or reclaim trust among the people who have sort of, to varying extents, gotten wise to this essentially big power grab that's happening on the part of the elite right now. So narrative management is a big part of it. And the internet has been an issue for them in that regard, in terms of allowing whoever, anyone to publish information or read, and for people to read that information, hence the increased efforts to not just censor, but also have them through AI produce the lion's share of content. And I think it's been said now that ChatGPT and generative AI like it is going to be responsible for 90% of content online by 2025, which is, a year from now. So obviously those agendas are marching forward quite quickly, and I'm sure as the 2024 US presidential election approaches, there will again be unprecedented censorship efforts that even the pro-free speech platform owned by Elon Musk, X, formerly Twitter, has embraced, as have, the more legacy social media platforms that don't take that, free speech posturing. Like Facebook and Google and what have you. So I think, we'll see a renewed push for that, for the purpose of narrative control, because it's very likely that the 2024 election is going to be, contentious, because essentially the dynamics for that have been set up over the past two U.S. presidential elections. Essentially, the side that loses, regardless if it's Democrats or Republican, are going to contest the results. And there's obviously going to be, issues there, and the potential for either a January 6th equivalent among Democrats, or, a supposed repeat of what they hoped January 6th would turn into. Because in my opinion, that was an event that they really essentially a false flag to sort of push through the domestic terror narrative. And even with all those efforts there, it didn't really stick, because, there was not really a very small death count there. And despite the comparisons to try and link January 6th in the public mind to 9/11, after that event took place, it didn't end up sticking that way. But I think, over the course of this year, it's very possible that there will be some events and crises that they will try to frame that way. And I think at the end of the day, the solution that will be offered to the public is going to be, a regulated internet, increased control over internet, the end of the ability to have anonymity or privacy online, which of course is going to tie into the broader efforts to eliminate financial privacy as well. I think they have very individualized profiles on people that in part have been produced by AI and some of these big data mining firms that work for intelligence agencies like Palantir. And the goal of that is to basically, the military and all of these groups, knowing we know that they've invested millions of dollars in building essentially bot armies that are used to conduct influence operations. And we know they also do that against the domestic populace. And that, this was legalized under the Obama era. They lifted the domestic propaganda ban and all of these other things with the NDAA, or one of the NDAAs in the Obama era. And all of that can be pointed at the US populace domestically for the purpose of advancing what these guys say is in the US's national interest, but increasingly it's in, either the deep state or the power elite's best interest, which tends to be from preventing any sort of real change from happening that would lessen their power or prevent us from, going even further down this path that we are on. So, I definitely think it's, open season for psyops in a way it never has been. And what I worry too, in this particular sphere, is that there's an increased effort because of their efforts to regain trust. What they're seeking to do is sort of to co-opt or use or lend people that don't deserve it anti-establishment clout, so that they can essentially act like they're going to deliver the change that people want. But they'll be delivering the same policies that their political bases are against, whether that's digital ID or programmable surveillable money, or things of that nature, while claiming that they're against those things. As an example, with like central bank digital currencies, there's also a dual effort by commercial banks to issue commercial bank digital currencies, which are also CBDCs under the names of deposit tokens or bank issued stable coins. And so, maybe figures like Trump and Ron DeSantis and some of these other figures have, said, if we're elected or in power, there will be no central bank digital currency. But are they against, JP Morgan issuing, deposit tokens or stable coins that are just as programmable and surveillable as what, the central bank could issue? And is that really any better for prosperity and liberty of Americans? Is it better to be surveilled by Wall Street and have them program your money than it is to have the Fed? Quite frankly not, especially when you consider that people like Jamie Dimon, for example, have come out on record saying they think private property should be seized in order to meet, UN climate goals and things of that nature. It's really ultimately the same thing at the end of the day. And so I think we're going to see, various efforts to try and herd people into the same system. But in order to have that happen, they have to convince people that the initiatives they're supporting are actually against this control grid to an extent, by giving it different names and different appearances. But ultimately, it's fundamentally the same.